My name is Elise and I'm 32 years old. The biggest mistake of my life might have been marrying Mark. But there were moments, certain breaking points. I just closed my eyes and waited for everything to get better. Then one day I opened them and everything had already changed. I had a boutique, small but chic. In the fashion world, everything had to have a style. Until now, I thought everything was going fine. Mark was my entire life. Before we got married, we spent almost every day together. But the last few months, things started to shift. First, I noticed Mark was going on business trips more often. So I just bowed my head and thought, maybe he's just swamped with work. But one day, I saw him receive a message on his phone early in the morning. He quickly turned it off and left the room. In that moment, I felt something strange inside me. But he was a man I trusted so much that I somehow tried to reassure myself. Then I started noticing more. Strange passwords popping up on his phone late at night, messages coming in at the exact time he said he was out for dinner. But perhaps the worst was one evening when he came back from a business dinner and approached me with the scent of an unfamiliar perfume. I tried to brush it off quickly, but everything has its limits. One day, it all exploded at once. My eyes caught a message that popped up on my phone. "Elise, I'm leaving you. Layla and I are starting a new life together. I've emptied everything left in our account. This is what you deserve." As I read the message, it was as if gravity disappeared and everything came crashing down. My hands kept holding the phone, but there was a gaping void inside me. Yet my eyes looking outward were cold. I didn't cry, nor did I get angry. I just suddenly realized how everything had gone so wrong. The anger building inside me made me feel that every sacrifice I'd made over the years had been for nothing. But there was another feeling too. In that moment, I thought this wasn't the end, it was a beginning. The dark thoughts in my mind started taking shape one by one. That day, as I closed my boutique and headed home, I realized I had planned everything perfectly. 'Cause I was always one step ahead, prepared for anything. Mark never noticed. A week earlier, while we were consolidating our joint accounts, I had slowly transferred my money to another account. Mark accepted it as a completely natural move. He even said, "How safe and practical." But that account had already found its place before it was completely drained. Today I got another message. This time it was shorter and more to the point. "Layla and I are moving to Miami. No turning back. You can take my stuff." Layla. That woman was the new secretary at his office. They had been getting closer every day. I could feel it. But I didn't expect this much. He thought everything looked perfect. But he still didn't know how this game was played. I had a plan. A few weeks ago, in the early morning hours, I secretly copied some information from Mark's computer. I took records of his suspicious bank transactions. Now everything was about him, and he was going to lose everything in his life. I knew that very well. I woke up the next day with a feeling that everything was about to get even more complicated. In the early morning hours, as I prepared my coffee to start the day, I reviewed the messages on my phone again. On one hand, I could feel how harshly Mark's last message had hit me. He was so cold. He betrayed me and left me with a casual good luck. But he no longer had the power to hurt me. I tried to go through my day as if everything were normal, but my mind was fixated on one thing: revenge. This wasn't just an insult to me, it was the trashing of all those years, the life we had built together. Was it really that easy? I couldn't understand it. But one thing was clear now: from this moment on, nothing would be the same. When I got to work, my efforts to leave all these tangled thoughts outside and focus were completely in vain. Because the plan inside me was growing with every passing moment. I opened my boutique, and normally my first customer of the morning was Mrs. Carter. a woman known for her passion for fashion. That moment, I pushed aside the thoughts swirling in my head and started picking out dresses for her. I knew Mrs. Carter's taste. We had always gotten along easily. But today, everything was different. My mind was constantly on Mark and Layla. An hour later, a new notification popped up on my phone. A new message from Mark. Slowly, feeling the tight grip around my heart, I opened it. "Don't forget to pick up my stuff. Today, we'll go over everything one more time." The man who had abandoned me still wanted to control everything. But he had no idea that things were about to turn upside down. 'Cause I wasn't as simple as he thought. To him, I was just an ordinary woman, someone who seemed like a loss in his eyes. But in my eyes, there was only revenge. That moment, a smile crossed my mind. I was so calm and calculated that it almost looked like everything was fine on the outside. Another customer came in, but my mind was busy preparing Mark's downfall. I had tracked his every move. I had started setting my biggest trap for him. This wasn't just about money or revenge. There had to be a price for all those years he spent with me. In the afternoon, as I finished work and headed home, the thoughts running through my mind suddenly became reality. A few days ago, I had thought about the moment I transferred the details of the credit card Mark used into his secret bank accounts. Almost all of his accounts were hidden, but I knew this game well. This time, no matter what he did, there was no turning back. When I got home, everything was ready to put the plans swirling in my head into action. I had installed hidden security cameras, including one near the garage door leading to our apartment. When Mark came home, everything worked so seamlessly that it was almost like I was mocking him. A week ago, when Mark suggested the new account to me, he had still talked about how safe and peaceful it felt. Yes, that was the moment when it all became clear how things would unravel. Because there was one thing he hadn't noticed. I was watching his every step. As the days passed, Mark's confidence grew. After work, he'd go have lunch with Layla in the mornings. In the evenings, he continued draining our last joint account. I hadn't expected this much, but when I realized how much I was benefiting from the situation, a strange pleasure welled up inside me. One evening, when I thought Mark would come to me for the last time, everything was going exactly as I had planned. 'Cause a week earlier, I had transferred all the money he had secretly withdrawn from the bank into my own account. While doing this, I recorded his every move, setting a trap for him. But that trap would unfold in a way he absolutely didn't expect. Mark always considered himself clever. He thought he was the one in control. That's what he'd done his whole life: manipulate people, draw them into his game, and then toss them aside when he was done. But this time, he was playing his game with the wrong person. That night, as I sat at the kitchen table slowly swirling my wine glass, I smiled at the notification that popped up on my phone. First phase of my plan was complete. Mark, oblivious to everything, was rushing headlong into the trap I had set for him. He had bought his ticket to Miami with money he thought was his, not realizing it actually belonged to me. His secret bank account had been drained, and legally, nothing remained in his name. And the best part? He had done it all with his own hands. Just a few weeks ago, on a night when Mark came home late from work, I had accessed his laptop. He thought he'd changed his passwords, but for someone like me, that was nothing. I wasn't shocked when I saw his private bank accounts. There, I noticed he had been stashing large sums of money. It wasn't hard to guess why. He planned to start his new life with the money I had provided him. But things wouldn't go the way he wanted. The next morning, I went to my boutique. I acted like it was a normal day. Even though storms were raging inside me, I had learned to appear calm on the outside. For all, I knew how people typically reacted when betrayed: tears, outbursts of anger. But I was different. My revenge required patience. In the afternoon, I got a message from Mark. "I'll come by tonight to pick up my stuff." At least we can say goodbye civilly. Oh, Mark. He still thought he was in control of the game. I thought about the evidence he had handed me with his own hands. The suspicious bank transactions signed by him, the money he withdrew from the credit card, and the illegal payments he made at the company. I had it all. And more importantly, it would only take a few keystrokes to send this information to the authorities. But first, I wanted to see him one last time. Clock struck exactly 8 p.m. when the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, composed myself, and opened the door. Mark was there. His face carried an expression, a mix of regret, a bit of arrogance, and mostly triumph. For him, this was a game he had won. He was ready to leave. He was preparing to abandon me and start his new life with Layla. He stepped inside and let his eyes wander around the room. "I don't want much," he said. "Just my clothes and a few personal items." I laughed inwardly, 'cause I had already taken everything truly valuable. Slowly, I pointed to a small suitcase in the corner of the living room. "I prepared these for you," I said in a calm voice. Mark raised his eyebrows in surprise. "That's it?" I expected more. "You're going to build your own life, aren't you?" I said coolly. "Then why would you need more stuff?" He nodded with a smile. "Despite everything, I'm glad we're parting ways civilly, Elise. No emotional scenes, no tears." I liked that. As I looked at his face, the anger inside me gave way to a sense of triumph. I hadn't shed tears because I wasn't the one who had lost. As he reached for the suitcase, it was time for my final move. "Mark," I said slowly, my voice cutting through like a knife. "You might want to check your bank accounts one more time before heading to Miami." His brows furrowed. "Why?" I slowly pulled my phone out of my pocket and pressed a few buttons. I still had access to his bank accounts. Within seconds, his face turned ashen. "What? What's happening?" he stammered. All his accounts had been wiped clean. Not a single penny remained. The last money transfers he made, the canceled credit cards, it was all over. Mark's breath caught in his throat. In a panic, he pulled out his own phone and tried to log in again. Same result. Now he was looking at me in a frenzy. "You! What did you do?" I leaned forward slowly and looked into his face. "Me," I said in a sweet tone. "I did what you did. You abandoned me, emptied our accounts. But it seems I played a little smarter." Mark took a step back. He was in shock. This has to be a joke. There were tens of thousands of dollars in those accounts." I shrugged. "Yes, there were. But not anymore. I have records of transactions signed by you, Mark. All your suspicious money transfers, illegal dealings. If I call the police, an investigation for financial fraud will open within hours. Do you think Layla will still want to go to Miami with you?" His eyes widened in horror. "You wouldn't do that." I took a step toward him. "Want to test me?" Mark was at a loss for what to do. Every path in front of him had closed. Did he really think Layla would still love him? Did he believe a woman who wanted him for his money wouldn't abandon a penniless man? He took another step back, then fixed his eyes on the floor. For the first time, he understood he had been defeated. This was my moment. I had taken all the power from him. "Now go, Mark," I said. "And don't come back." He looked at me one last time, then quickly opened the door and stormed out. When I closed the door behind him, I let out a deep breath. It was over. That night, as I closed my boutique, there was a deep peace within me. I hadn't been the victim. I hadn't been the abandoned, betrayed woman. I was the one who had won. And Mark? He now had nothing left. I didn't just teach him a lesson. I ruined his life. And I didn't feel the slightest bit of regret. A few days had passed since Mark left, and everything had unfolded so quickly that it felt as though the world had suddenly come to a standstill. In my boutique, things continued as if everything were normal, but my state of mind grew more constricted with each passing day. It wasn't just about taking revenge. I also wanted to set aside the indifference that had been building inside me for some time. I had wasted so many years of a relationship for nothing, and there was a void within me filled with resentment. I was starting to accept that it was all over, but something was missing. I felt like I had gotten the full measure of what Mark had taken from me. Yet I still felt something was lacking. The boutique was getting busier day by day. People were shopping more than ever, and I had plenty of customers around me. But something had changed. The emptiness inside me. At night, I thought about the helplessness I had seen in Mark's eyes. Yes, I had taught him a major lesson, but there was also a small piece of pity inside me. Just a small piece. A week later, my coworker Stella started talking about Mark's collapse at work. Haven't you heard? Mark's in the middle of a huge financial downfall. He's lost all his business. He left the city with Layla, but there are still creditors chasing him. Everyone's demanding their money from him. He's in such a bad spot. In that moment, as Stella spoke, something stirred inside me. Mark's downfall had happened so quickly that seeing the situation in all its reality suddenly gave me an odd sense of satisfaction. On one hand, I didn't feel sorry for him, but on the other, there was a feeling within me. I quickly thought back to those days, the times when we first met. There were so many beautiful memories that had once held a place in my life, only to vanish in an instant. I took a slow, deep breath. Perhaps the true revenge wasn't just making him pay for his wrongs, it was watching what he had lost. The Mark's fear, the things he'd forfeited, all that meaninglessness. Watching them was the real punishment I had inflicted on him. One morning, an old friend, Hannah, called me while I was at work. She was quite shocked when she heard about Mark and Layla leaving me. But at the same time, she said, "Elise, did they just disappear that easily? I mean, don't you think they were a bit too cruel to you?" There was worry in her voice. I understood. My friends still felt sorry for me. But they didn't realize how strong I was. "Hannah," I said calmly, "for me, this wasn't a reckoning, it was a conclusion. I let them go, but I had to establish my own order. They didn't hurt me, they hurt their own lives." She stayed silent for a while. Then, taking a deeper breath, she said, "Yes, maybe you're right. But be careful, Elise. Not everyone always gets the outcome they want. Sometimes these kinds of things can hurt you more." For me, the story was over. But from the outside, I felt like everything was still ongoing. And he was still moving forward, unaware that he had lost me. A month later, remaining calm forever, approaching everything with composure, meant revenge had to be digested slowly. 'Cause the real blow would come at the point where their lives completely fell apart. This depended on the documents that would surface at Mark's old workplace. One morning, I received a call from my new workplace. When I recognized that voice, a voice that had once been familiar to me years ago but now sounded entirely different, I paused for a moment. "Elise, I'm letting you know because they won't leave you alone. We've started seriously exposing Mark and Layla." On the other end of the line was an old coworker of mine. Someone who always had information but was also a bit unnecessarily cunning. They committed massive fraud at the company. There are so many shady transactions, I can't even count them all. A few weeks ago, they signed some contracts in your name. So you're involved in this, did you realize that? At first, I didn't know what to do. I thought about how everything Mark and Layla had taken from me was coming back around. But this was a much bigger deal. If it was all true, everything that belonged to me would now come fully into the light. And Mark? This time, he wouldn't just pay the price for abandoning me. He'd also pay for all the fraud he had committed. The voice on the other end of the phone was James from my old workplace. He was the one who always found out things discreetly, never missing a single detail. The person we called our inside eyes. "Elise, listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you." The serious tone in his voice was unusually stern for someone who typically loved to joke around. What Mark and Layla have done has reached a point where it could put both the company and you in serious trouble. They've set a trap so big that they don't even realize how deep it goes. "What do you mean, James?" I asked, feeling a sinking sensation in my heart that something was going terribly wrong. "Those contracts were signed, Elise. They were signed in your name, indirectly making you part of a crime. Just like with the confidential information about your business. They won't just go bankrupt. Your name is tied to this too. This situation could drag the company, you and Mark into a huge mess." All of a sudden, I felt everything getting even more tangled. The game Mark had played against me had suddenly pulled me into it as well. I had never considered that the trap I'd set for him could end up harming me. But now I could be in serious trouble. "How can we fix this?" I asked. I was genuinely scared because nothing was worse than everything spiraling out of control all at once. James stayed silent for a moment. Then, taking a noticeably deep breath, he said, "Elise, maybe you can wait for the right time." Maybe, but before he could finish his sentence, the sound on the phone changed abruptly. Something happened. Tremor in his voice, which I could clearly detect, cut off. And then I felt something was going wrong. "James? James, can you hear me?" I asked again. But there was no response. Only a faint clicking sound from the phone and some noise. Then the connection dropped completely. That night, the warnings James had given me over the phone left my mind in turmoil. I had accomplished everything regarding Mark, but now what would happen to the files, contracts, and transactions tied to me? I was so shaken that for hours I couldn't focus on anything. Truth doesn't always stay hidden behind masks. I spent the night as I had to. But the next morning at 7:30, a message came that suddenly shifted everything into a new dimension. It was from Mark. "I'm aware of everything you've tried to scare me with, Elise. But in the end, the one who's going to lose is you. Because I've started revealing the real truth." All at once, everything came crashing down. Mark, just as he had done to me, was now twisting the truth to set a trap. All those documents, secret contracts, the legal loopholes within the company. He was trying to pin it all on me. Many people think they're living in a different world, and from the outside, their lives might seem beautiful. But someone like Mark, who walks through life deceiving others at every step, ultimately heads only toward their own destruction. Calmly, I picked up my phone and called James. No one answered. Everything had turned strange. For a moment, not knowing whether the message from him was real or not filled me with even more fear. Mark couldn't be doing this just to hurt me. But still, how had I fallen into such a trap? An inner voice reminded me that I had held Mark accountable for every step he took, while at the same time I was thinking about my own losses. This wasn't just about money. It was about whether a person could stand behind the promises they made. One morning, I received the final message I had been expecting from Mark. "Your last chance. Otherwise, everything will be your end too." I slowly put the phone in my pocket, taking a deep breath with trembling hands. Something was very wrong. This message from Mark, which felt like a threat, now carried an entirely different meaning. No matter how menacing he tried to be, every move he made, every word he said was presenting me with a huge opportunity. Now I had to do much more. I needed to take the step to bring an end to this dark journey Mark and Layla had embarked on. I started reviewing the transactions in my own account. And what I saw was that there wasn't a single manipulation he hadn't tried to pin on me. With all this hidden information coming to light, Mark's life would legally fall apart. But it wasn't that simple. I had to set up the trap I'd prepared for him perfectly from every angle. This wasn't just about his loss, it was about the end of everything he had built. I couldn't wait to watch Mark and Layla's greatest downfall at the very moment they thought everything was over. Calm within me was guiding me more and more with each passing day. Now, it wasn't just about taking revenge. I also wanted to wait and see how deeply this destruction would affect them. And one day it came to me. The moment when he truly lost everything. While Mark thought he'd pay the price for all the wrongs he'd done to me, I had to take one more step. But now, it wasn't just about him. I needed to expose the filth inside Layla too. Everything hinged on what Layla had been up to lately. An inner voice told me I needed to question not just her loyalty to Mark, but also the relationship she had built with me. 'Cause Layla was somehow part of this game too. And unfortunately, no one was innocent. One afternoon, Layla unexpectedly showed up at my boutique. I wasn't expecting it, but I had a feeling. I was so composed that my face showed no expression. I was just thinking about what to do in that moment. "Elise, we need to talk," she said, catching me off guard. I don't want this to escalate any further. First, I thought about how calm she seemed. Layla, as always, was trying to control the situation. But this time, things were different. "Why do you want to see me?" I asked, my voice steady without a hint of wavering. I was genuinely curious. What did she want, and what was she going to tell me? Layla slowly pulled out a chair and sat down. "I came to tell you that I didn't do any of the things Mark said, and that I don't really want you to lose everything." Something stirred inside me. I didn't fully understand what she meant. Through all, Layla and Mark had held all the control. They were the ones who had turned my life upside down. But now I was trying to figure out what this woman had come here to say. "So, you expect me to believe you?" I asked. "Then what? Are you going to team up with me?" Layla took a deep breath, and the fear in her eyes suddenly became apparent. "I didn't come here to team up with you, Elise. But I know Mark is slowly starting to lose everything. He once said he loved you. But now there's a completely different man inside him. He's on the edge of a breakdown." Without losing my resolve, I took a step closer and asked, "What do you mean?" Layla's eyes still darted away. "Mark is heading down such a dark path now that there's no turning back. He's not the man he used to be." This wasn't new information to me. Mark had always been drawn to his darker side. But Layla's explanations hinted at a new opening. Now, I needed to figure out how to turn her fears into an advantage. "I can guess what you're planning," I said. Her words were making the plan in my mind even clearer. Taking a slow, deep breath, I added, "I'd like to see how long your loyalty to Mark will last. When he starts falling from such a height, I don't think there'll be anything left for you." Layla's lips trembled. For a moment, silence reigned. But that silence was the calm before a major explosion. "I can help you, but only if you protect me, if you're on my side." Layla took a step closer, avoiding my gaze. In that moment, her desire to seek refuge with me was a kind of weakness. And I wanted to use that weakness as an opportunity. "What are you offering?" I asked. Layla fixed her eyes on me sharply and said, "I can give you information to completely destroy Mark. But you have to guarantee my safety. Because everything that man has done to me, he deserves worse." This point, I had to seriously consider Layla's offer. Could I really trust her? This woman knew Mark's dark side down to its deepest corners. But somehow, aligning with her could be the perfect chance to upend all of Mark's plans. Without taking my eyes off Layla, I said, "Then tell me what I need to do." A week later, Layla explained to me how to increase the pressure on Mark. She promised to provide me with information, documents, and all of Mark's dark secrets. But it came at a cost. Layla gave me documents detailing Mark's most important business partners at the company and how his financial transactions had been manipulated. These documents wouldn't just expose Mark, they would also reveal the crimes of those who worked with him. I could put an end not only to him but, to some extent, to the power held by everything associated with him. However, things were far from simple, because there was a deeper bond between Layla and Mark. They weren't just connected through business. On a personal level, they were profoundly tied to each other. Layla had fallen in love with Mark. That was the greatest weakness in her life. And I had to use that emotional attachment to my advantage. The documents Layla provided me with were indeed powerful enough to turn Mark's life upside down. But I had a feeling this was just the beginning. Now, what mattered most was how I would use this information and how Mark would escape the dead end he was in. Driving him to desperation wasn't as important as the satisfaction my anger toward him gave me. First, I had to protect myself. If I made a wrong move in this trap, everything could backfire and it could all turn against me. That night, as usual, I went to my office. While I started reviewing the documents Layla had given me, something inside me had already begun to change completely. This man, who had once been the center of my life, was now a stranger to me. And this stranger had become even more dangerous. The next day, I called Layla to my boutique. We needed to move quickly, but for the first time, I felt a slight unease toward her. Layla had deep knowledge of Mark's past. Perhaps my moving so fast meant I was overlooking all her traps and psychological games. In the end, I was playing a game that would destroy not just Mark, but Layla too. She arrived at my boutique at exactly 3 p.m. She was as composed as I'd expected, but that old fear still lingered in her eyes. It was as if she wanted to give me one last chance. "Can I trust you?" I asked, focusing on my desk. This question was really an expression of the doubt I felt toward her. Everything I hadn't done with Mark, I was now doing with Layla. Everything I had, every thought, the emptiness inside me, it was hard to make sense of it. Layla lowered her head, avoiding my gaze, and said, "I just want to help you." But her voice didn't sound convincing to me. "Why?" I asked. I was searching for an ulterior motive in every word, every move she made. "If you really want to help me, you need to tell me everything. What do you really want, Layla?" Layla blinked and took a deep breath. "You need to understand what I've told you. Mark is a very dangerous person. Don't trust him anymore. If you listen to me, I can help you. Don't let him completely destroy you." A chill ran down my spine, because Layla was only trying to save herself. Through all, she always tried to appear strong, but deep down there was fear. She knew she was part of this game too. Now was the perfect time to pull her to my side. "I'm not playing games with you, Layla. You need to understand that," I said. "Either you cooperate, or it's only a matter of time before you sink into the same mire." Fear flashed in Layla's eyes. She finally had to accept it. She understood me completely. Her internal struggle was actually giving me a huge advantage. Layla had no choice but to support me in the war against Mark. And I gave her an opportunity. The following week, everything took shape quickly. The information Layla provided began to expose the major manipulations Mark had carried out in the business world. With this knowledge, I wouldn't just take down Mark, I'd also bind Layla to me. She was, at the same time, Mark's greatest weakness. I had to use that. I could see the determination in my eyes. It was no longer just about revenge. Now it was also about finding my own freedom at the end of this dark chain of relationships. One morning, Layla called me to a meeting. However, this meeting had a different significance. It was a golden opportunity to counter Mark's final move and bring everything to an end. But having come this far, everything was at risk of falling apart. "Elise, we need to talk," Layla said, her voice trembling over the phone. "Mark's starting to draw too much attention. Things are getting very complicated. We need to make a plan." "A plan?" I asked. "Where, Layla?" In that moment, I realized how dangerous Layla's offer to me was. As we neared the end of everything, the only thing we now faced was how we would betray each other to save our own lives. Mark had already planned to deliver the final blow, but the more he feared, the closer we got to him. The end of this, it would either be his downfall or all of ours. A week later, the major financial unraveling at Mark's company began. Everything was unfolding as we had expected. Mark's secret accounts had been exposed, and the documents proving his fraud were coming to light one by one. And Layla's loss was shaping up to be a complete victory for me. Now it was even easier to bring her under my control. I could help her to completely destroy Mark, but she should never be someone I trusted. In the end, I made my decision. There was a fear inside me. A sob, a deep breath, and a fleeting sense of weakness. All of it reminded me that everything would soon come to a resolution. I had been planning for so long that I never imagined things would move this fast or that I'd find myself at a point I hadn't anticipated. The game I was playing with Layla was growing increasingly complex. Now there were losers on both sides. Mark's downfall was dragging everyone tied to him down one by one. But he had invested so much time and energy that he wanted it all to end without even looking at what was left behind. And now it was my time. The information Layla had given me contained every detail that accelerated Mark's financial collapse. But they were just documents. There was so much more than the facts and the moments of confrontation. In the end, it was about waiting for the right time and making the right move. I had promised Layla, but there was a sliver of doubt inside me. This was a very dangerous game we were playing. One morning, I watched Mark's final move. I had begun examining him not just in the business world, but on a deeply personal level. Who was he, really? Mark had always wanted me to trust him, but he was a man I could never fully trust. The years I spent with him had ultimately left me with nothing but disappointment and anger. Yet on one hand, there were those old feelings for him. Perhaps those feelings had completely faded. That moment, the phone rang. It was James. "Elise, I have bad news for you," he said. "Layla has gone back to Mark's side. You're in so much danger right now. You don't have much time to figure this out." "What are you saying?" I asked, feeling a mix of fear and anger rising within me. "What did Layla do?" James took a deep breath. "Layla is setting a trap for you by showing Mark what you've done. She leaked the information she gave you, Elise. Mark knows everything about you, that it was all a game. It was all a trap." A moment of silence followed. Those words had thrown my mind into chaos. Was Layla deceiving me? Layla? Was she that deep in a lie? I asked, almost holding my breath. "What should I do?" "It's the end of everything now," James said, his voice trembling with worry. "Mark knows it all. He's aware of your game. Now you either trap him or it's over for you." Layla and Mark had learned each other's weaknesses, and I was watching it all unfold with my own eyes. Layla had leaked the documents she gave me so deeply that I was convinced everything was part of a game. After hanging up the phone, fear and anger intertwined within me. How had I let her deceive me so easily? Layla had set such a clever trap that she made me trust her in the end. But it had turned into a swamp big enough to drag not just Mark, but me into it as well. Now it was time to take another step. The game Layla was playing had merged with the one Mark had been playing against me. I had to face both of them now. I needed to destroy both Layla and Mark by confronting them with their greatest fears. No matter how dangerous it was, this game had to end. In the darkness of the night, as I waited outside Mark's office, I was piecing everything together. I hadn't come to hurt him. I had come to catch him right in the middle of his game. Tonight, Mark's life would come to an end. And finally, as Mark stepped out of his office, I followed him with my eyes. This man who had deceived me, manipulated me, and controlled my every move for all those years had finally found me. But this time, it wasn't just about me. He would have to answer for everything he had done up until now. Mark was preparing to end the night, but my plan had already begun to unfold. In the morning hours, the sounds coming from the office showed Mark making one last desperate attempt to salvage everything. Layla and Mark had put on each other's masks, each continuing to play their roles. But there was a real mask, one that was hidden, concealed, and feared. Elise. You again? Mark's voice still carried that cold, reassuring tone. But could the fear in his eyes still be hidden? I had to catch him. This time, it was the end of everything. You always thought you'd notice me, didn't you, Mark? I said, wanting only to see how weak he truly was. But today, you'll realize how fragile your mask is. Mark, trying to conceal the fear in his eyes, said, We need to end this, Elise. We built something together, didn't we? But what we had built no longer held any meaning. And at that exact moment, I noticed Layla was there too. She was standing by Mark's side. But the emptiness in her eyes was slowly giving way to clarity. Layla knew it too. Tonight was the end for all of us. You don't want me anymore, do you? I said, smiling. Neither of you has any way out now. That moment, only one thing remained, setting one final trap and bringing everything to an end. It was the end of everything. Mark's great secret had been exposed, and no matter how much Layla loved him, she had finally been forced to accept his betrayal. But the darkness inside me was still vast enough to swallow me whole. Because all of this was just a part of revenge. Yet when revenge becomes its own purpose, no matter how satisfying it feels, it leaves me with nothing. Mark realized everything in a moment he never expected. Leaning against the large window in his office, he took a deep breath. The expression on his face clearly showed that it was the end of everything. No matter what he did now, there was no escape. What do you want to win me over, Elise? He asked. His voice was so desperate that it could almost evoke pity. But still, there was no mercy in me. You have nothing left, Mark, I said coldly. You've lost me and everything else. And at that exact moment, Layla walked in. There was an emptiness in her eyes, but something within it was changing. She was so strong that she made Mark feel she could do anything to him, yet at the same time, she looked like a victim. Mark's gaze in that moment was far too late to understand what he expected from Layla. Layla had already realized it. Being with him meant his destruction would become her own. Now they were chained to each other. But that chain was a trap designed solely to slowly kill Mark. Layla, without taking her eyes off me, approached Mark slowly and said, It's all over. In that instant, a massive wave of shock hit Mark. He tried to defend himself, but Layla and I were cornering him from every angle. In the end, only one thing remained, Mark's fear. It didn't take me long to see it. Fear can become the most powerful driving force a person can have. In that moment, Mark truly lost everything. But his greatest loss was facing his own doubts. He could no longer control either his confidence or the dark peace within him. Mark had truly become a loser. But as the emptiness inside me grew, I realized that everything was just destruction. Through all those years of a relationship, something was still missing within me. Even revenge didn't satisfy me. Because afterward, it became increasingly clear just how dark a place I had started from. In my final conversation with Mark, my anger toward him was more an attempt to deceive myself than an emotion. I wanted to hurt him, but in doing so, I didn't want to lose myself. But Layla knew it too. We had all set a trap, yet none of us knew where that trap would lead. Then, Layla paused for a moment and, looking straight into my eyes, realized that Mark's downfall was truly our success. But strangely, there seemed to be a hidden fear. She too was part of the trap. "Do you think this is the end of everything?" Layla asked, trying to hide the slight tremble in her voice. "This isn't an end, Layla. It's actually a beginning," I said, stepping forward slowly. "Now we're just completely stripping off each other's masks." Layla fell silent for a moment. In her eyes, there was fear of confronting the guilt within her. But she managed to pull herself together, smiled, and slowly walked toward Mark. In that moment, all the masks had truly fallen. A week later, all of Mark's business connections had collapsed, and his company was almost entirely bankrupt. Now everything was truly lost. Mark had changed completely, leaving no trace of his former power or ego. For me, this victory was a reflection of everything. But still, there was an emptiness inside me. Layla and I thought it was all over, but the real end was much closer than we realized. Mark had one final move left. One evening, a letter arrived at my office. When I opened it, I read Mark's words preparing his last move. "Elise, I'm aware of everything. You brought me down, but this is just the beginning. Now I'm going to destroy you." My vision blurred. I didn't even take a breath. Mark was finished, and no matter how much he had planned, I would be the one to win in the end. This was the start of an even darker game. Nothing had truly ended. Mark's final move was reminding me of my old strength. Layla and I were prepared for him. But the greater danger was that neither of us trusted the other. The real players in this story were still us. And now, I was only just beginning to realize how complicated everything had become. In the middle of the story, deciding who was a friend and who was an enemy was causing everything to change. With every step, I was setting a deeper trap, thinking no one could escape. Both me and Layla, and perhaps Mark in the end, would search for a way out from the right place. But this was a trap. And the only one with an escape would be me.